Yeah, what's happening?
We thought you were big time with us already.
Don't forgot to pod you up.
Hey, there we are. Hi.
No, just kidding. Hey, Ian, we're expecting Zach Wilson back for the Jets. I mean, you don't do pitch counts in football, but how healthy is he, or did he really want to come back? Did they give him his doctors give him clearance? Like, how healthy should we expect Zach Wilson to be?
So here's kind of where he is physically. He's dealing with obviously the meniscus trim and a bone bruise. Bone bruise was more problematic. So basically, the way it is when you're trying to come back from that is it's a 6-week injury, and week 4 or 5, you're probably normal. You think you can go, you feel normal, you look normal, and every player who's had it is like, why can't I be out there?
Yeah.
But that's when you can re-injure it if you kind of push it just a little bit. So you're probably going to see him physically fine. The difference now between, say, last week or the week before is if he really pushes it, he can't re-injure himself. So whatever he is out there, however he plays football-wise, I would say he's at least going to be fully healthy.
Yeah, and that's a good sign. And you wonder, fully what the implication is if he plays poorly, and they don't. I don't think he has a short leash, I guess, is the question. The only short leash would be is if he starts limping around out there. That's the only time we'd see Joe Flacco re-enter the game for the Jets, because they need to find out about Zach Wilson.
Yeah, most important thing about the whole season. And I don't know where they're going to be by the end of this. They've had some moments. I mean, Flacco has looked okay in this offense and great in this offense, and I have no earthly idea what Zach Wilson is going to be or look like, but it has become like one of the top 5 most interesting stories in the NFL this year, I think, just because there's so much riding on how actually good is he. But I don't think there's going to be a leash. He is the starting quarterback unless he gets injured. And then you just see what happens at the end of the year, probably.
Okay. So it's on Ian Rapoport with us here on Tiki and Tierney on the Fan. Yeah, listen, Ian, you were in the middle of this too. I don't know exactly where you stood, but to a man, there was a lot of positive energy this season, this summer, free agency, the draft toward the Jets. And I was on that list without overstating it. I think we all knew there was finally a real infusion of talent. So here we are, granted, a couple of games in, granted, without their starting quarterback. But the New York Jets, do the New York Jets strike you as a well-coached team when you watch them play?
That's really hard to tell with a backup quarterback in there, especially one with some deficiencies. Like Flacco's not going to move around a lot. He's not going to make plays himself. He'll make what's there, and that's kind of it. So when there are opportunities, he makes them, but you sort of can't tell. I think the defense has been okay. It's all been fine, but the quarterback is so important to all of it. I'd like to see what happens when he gets in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're a pretty well-coached team. Whereas, I went to the Giants game the other day, which was fun. I never get to go to games. So I went to the Giants game, and they really do look like they lost, I know, but they look like a really well-coached team.
Yes.
The Jets, I sort of could go back and forth on that, but we haven't seen the complete thing. So I'd like to see everyone out there before we really make a decision.
No, I agree. And to be fair to Coach Saleh and the Jets, I think that's probably the prudent way to approach it. But if we've got, and let's face it, Giants had no talent. That's not a diss. That's just the reality. But we can say 3 games into Dable's tenure, the New York Giants seem to be a very well-coached team. Yeah. Here we are 3 games into the second season for Robert Saleh, and we can't quite make that assertion. So when we're not able to say that, aren't you really saying on some level that they might not be?
I mean, I guess, but here's the problem. We know that the Jets were going to go from the bottom to hopefully the top and somewhere where they are playoff caliber, playoff contenders. Going through it like this, the middle part, which is hopefully where they are at, is really terrible because you have talented players. You have a really talented rookie class. I think you have a pretty talented rookie class from last year. You got some guys you really like, some young guys who are playing, but they screw up a lot. And so I don't know the difference between young guys making regular mistakes and young guys who aren't coached well enough to not make mistakes. I think that's, as I try to look at this and analyze it and figure out where the Jets are, that's the hardest thing for me. They're playing so many young guys. Isn't it just okay that some of these young guys make mistakes because they just don't know any better?
I understand that part.
Yeah, I would agree with that because you can't look at a young player's mistakes and say, well, the coach didn't coach him up. He may have. He just doesn't know what he's doing right or wrong. You're not hearing anything about Robert Saleh being, potentially not the coach in the near short term, correct?
I'm not.
Yeah.
Nothing like that at all. To me, they are behind him. They're behind Joe Douglas. The only thing that anyone ever talks about is, with Woody back from England, what does that mean? That's the only sort of wild card. I haven't sensed that it means anything now, except for, people, everyone sees the urgency. And when Woody shows up, I think the urgency gets very real. But I haven't heard anything at all that would lead me to believe that the organization's view of the coaches and the GM is different from what Woody thinks.
Yeah, real quickly, let me jump over to the Giants, Ian.
I'm sorry, before you do that, just a quick follow-up on the Woody, because Woody Johnson, to me, Ian, is not an asset. I'm not saying that he's a complete detriment. Maybe he's just a neutral type of owner, but it's interesting. When you say that when Woody Johnson shows up, the urgency spikes, why? Like, what is Woody bringing to the table that is so interesting or sets people on guard? I don't see it with Woody Johnson at all.
No, I think it's just the history of wanting big things, trying to make a splash, understanding the New York landscape, that sometimes if you have big news that you are leading the tabloids, and sort of that mentality, which in the past, I think Woody has always gotten behind. Maybe he took a step back and took a break and went to England and was like, slow and steady wins the race. I'm just saying, from people all around and in the organization, when Woody was back, they're like, let's just see what this is. Let's see if anything changes.
Yeah, real quickly, Ian, the Giants have a receiver problem right now with the injuries, and Kadarius Toney's banged up and Wandale Robinson's banged up.
You can't suit up, right?
Yeah, I know, right? I don't know if I'm definitely not
wide receiver, maybe
taking the hits any longer. But Kenny Golladay seems to be the natural solution, but it doesn't seem like that's happening. Like, where do you see this playing out with Kenny Golladay?
I wrote an article before the Monday night game about the possibility of the Giants trading him.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a possibility. Eat all the salary, trade him for a late pick, and just move on. The thing is, he's not a bad guy, and it sounds like he's been fine. He is trying to get opportunities. I think there were some in the game where you're like, okay, maybe this is it. It's like this penalty, and then it's like drop. And the best case scenario for the Giants, they're already paying him. So the money is kind of whatever. It's just they're paying it.
Yeah.
So if they could somehow get him to be just a regular contributing receiver, it does solve some problems. The other thing is understanding what Golladay is. This is like no shot at him. He's never gotten separation. So if he doesn't get separation, can you get Daniel Jones to just throw it anyway? And maybe he'll kind of look more like the receiver he was in Detroit.
Got it.
But I'll tell you, Daniel Jones is probably reluctant to do that because he's sitting here saying, man, I don't want any more interceptions on my ledger. I'm trying to get a contract.
I'm not secure either.
Yeah, right?
That's it. No, that's the conundrum. By the way, again, I was at the game on Monday night. There were like 5 times where I thought Daniel Jones either, got out of a play or threw it away and saved himself an interception or a pick.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this guy is getting coached well, and it is really, really cool to see.
Yeah. Ian, good stuff, man. I know you guys are against it in terms of the TV stuff, so enjoy Week 4 tonight. By the way, those Bengals unis are sweet.
Yeah, agreed.
White helmets.
Awesome. Oh, they are. I tried to get my son a Burrow Bengals jersey. You could not get them.
Really?
Is that right?
Well, I just saw, Ian, I saw on social media that they did the end zones the same thing, white and black.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I just saw that.
I haven't
So
seen that.
That
should be a good game tonight. Thank you, pal. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, look forward to it. Take care, guys.
All right, man. There he is, Ian Rapoport. Ian's appearance brought to you by Kia and by Total Orthopedics, the experts at getting you back to being you. 877-337-6666. I'm looking at these Mets-Braves pitching matchups, the probable ones, and it's hard not to make a case that the Mets have the advantage in every game. Want to get to that a little bit. That's right, I said it. This is the greatest season in New York sporting history by anybody for any team. That is on Aaron Judge's resume. Prove me wrong. 877-337-6666. We got you one more hour. That it's Craig and Evan coming up after us.